Police officers are standing inside a Lego store. A YouTuber is filming everything. Employees are demanding he leave. Customers are watching in disbelief. And at the center of the chaos is a missing Lego Star Wars collection worth nearly $200,000. What started as a simple consignment agreement would spiral into lawsuits, police calls, viral investigations, accusations, corporate statements, deepfake controversies, and one of the biggest scandals the Lego community has ever seen. This is the story of the Bricks and Minifigs controversy. And depending on who you ask, it's either the story of a family desperately trying to recover a valuable collection, or a company being blamed for a deal it never approved. Either way, the mystery remains. To understand how everything unraveled, we have to start years before police ever stepped into the store. Bryan Mansell's father wasn't an ordinary Lego collector. For years, he had built an enormous collection of Star Wars sets and minifigures, not dozens, hundreds, rare collector pieces, retired sets, limited editions, items that Lego fans spend years trying to find. The collection reportedly included more than 780 sets and over 1,200 minifigures. Among them were some of the most sought-after Star Wars sets ever released. Over time, the collection's estimated value approached $200,000. Eventually, the family decided it was time to sell. According to Bryan, the proceeds would help support future generations of the family, including educational expenses. But selling a collection of that size wasn't simple. Finding individual buyers for hundreds of rare sets could take years, so Bryan entered into what seemed like a straightforward solution: a consignment arrangement with a Bricks and Minifigs franchise in Salem-Keizer, Oregon. The agreement was simple. The store would sell the sets, the family would receive payment as items sold. The store would keep an agreed percentage. At first, everything appeared normal. The collection became a major attraction. Collectors visited specifically to see it. Rare Star Wars sets filled display cases. Business seemed to be moving forward. Then everything changed. Behind the scenes, problems were developing between the franchise operator and Bricks and Minifigs corporate. Disputes emerged, relationships deteriorated, and eventually corporate moved to take control of the location. When ownership and management changed, Bryan says the payment stopped. Communication became difficult, and recovering the remaining collection became increasingly complicated. At first, it sounded like a simple business dispute, but then a much bigger question emerged. Where exactly was the collection? Because according to Bryan, a significant portion of it had not been returned. And depending on who was speaking, the answers about its location were very different. That should have been the beginning of the resolution. Instead, it was the beginning of the chaos, because this story eventually attracted someone who specializes in turning obscure disputes into internet spectacles, a YouTuber named Ben Schneider, better known online as Reckless Ben. If you've ever watched his channel, you know he rarely approaches controversies quietly. His investigations often involve direct confrontations, hidden cameras, unusual stunts, and a willingness to push situations much further than most people would. When Ben learned about the missing Lego collection, he became convinced something wasn't adding up. So he started investigating. He interviewed people connected to the case, he reviewed documents, he published videos, and then he began showing up at the store itself. What happened next transformed a local business dispute into a viral internet story. Ben entered the location seeking answers. Employees refused to engage. Tensions rose. Videos captured increasingly uncomfortable interactions. The atmosphere became hostile. Soon, store representatives accused him of trespassing. Police were called. Officers arrived, and footage of the encounters quickly spread across social media. Millions of people suddenly became aware of a dispute they had never heard of before. But instead of discouraging Ben, the confrontation seemed to fuel the investigation. Each new video attracted more viewers. Each new development generated more theories, and each new answer created even more questions. Then the situation became even stranger. Ben escalated his campaign. He released increasingly provocative content about the dispute. One of the most controversial moments involved AI-generated and deepfake-style material connected to individuals involved in the case. Supporters argued it was satire designed to draw attention to the dispute. Critics called it deceptive and irresponsible. Regardless of where people stood, it generated enormous attention. The story spread far beyond the LEGO community. Collectors, YouTubers, journalists, internet investigators, everyone seemed to have an opinion, and yet the central mystery remained unsolved. Where was the collection? At this point, Bricks and Minifigs Corporate publicly entered the conversation. The company released statements addressing the controversy. Their position was very different from Bryan's. According to Bricks and Minifigs Corporate, the original consignment arrangement had never been approved by corporate leadership. The company stated that the agreement was an independent arrangement created by the former franchise operator. In other words, corporate argued that the deal was unauthorized. The company further stated that when it eventually took control of the store, it did not find hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of consigned LEGO inventory sitting inside. That statement created an entirely new mystery, because if corporate didn't receive the collection when it took over the store, then where did it go? Had it already been sold? Had it been moved? Had it been distributed elsewhere? The answers remain disputed. Supporters of Bryan argued that someone needed to be held accountable. Supporters of the company argued that corporate was being blamed for a situation it inherited. Neither side was willing to back down. Then came another dramatic twist. The location at the center of the controversy ultimately ceased operating as a Bricks and Minifigs franchise. For many observers, this felt like a major turning point. The store that had become ground zero for one of the internet's strangest LEGO controversies was no longer part of the franchise network. But even that failed to provide closure. The collection was still the issue, the responsibility was still disputed, and legal battles continued. Lawsuits emerged involving former operators and parties connected to the dispute. Statements were issued. Claims were challenged. Documents were scrutinized by internet detectives trying to piece together the timeline. Yet years after the original agreement, many questions remained unanswered. And that's what makes this story so unusual. Most viral investigations eventually reach a definitive ending. A confession, a court ruling, a recovered item, a clear answer. This one didn't. Instead, it produced competing narratives. One narrative says a family entrusted a collection worth roughly $200,000 to a business arrangement and never recovered much of what belonged to them. The other says Bricks and Minifigs Corporate inherited a problem created by a former franchisee and should not be held responsible for agreements it never authorized. What is not disputed is that the collection existed. What is not disputed is that a consignment arrangement was made. What is not disputed is that ownership of the store changed. What is not disputed is that police became involved during confrontations at the location. What is not disputed is that the dispute exploded into one of the biggest controversies the LEGO community has ever seen. What remains disputed is the question everyone has been asking from the beginning. Who is ultimately responsible for what happened to the collection? Today, the story remains a cautionary tale for collectors, business owners, franchise operators, and anyone trusting valuable property to someone else's care. Because sometimes the mystery isn't whether something disappeared. It's figuring out exactly when it disappeared, who had it, who was responsible, and why, after years of investigations, lawsuits, statements, and viral videos, people are still arguing about the answer. Somewhere between a family collection, a franchise dispute, a YouTube investigation, police intervention, and a $200,000 pile of LEGO bricks, the truth became harder and harder to find. And until every piece of the puzzle is accounted for, one question continues to haunt this entire story. What really happened to the missing LEGO collection?